In the lively marketplace of Kitundu, life unfolded with its usual symphony of sounds, colors, and aromas. Traders called out their prices in melodic voices, vying for the attention of bustling villagers. The air was rich with the spicy scent of freshly ground cardamom and the earthy aroma of dried baobab fruit. Beneath the shaded awnings, the clink of beads and the shuffle of leather sandals on the dusty ground added rhythm to the scene. But today, something different crackled in the air, a tension that silenced even the most persistent merchants. It began with a low murmur, growing rapidly into a ripple of alarmed voices. People abandoned their stalls and baskets, drawn toward the center of the commotion like leaves carried by a strong wind. In the heart of the gathering, standing tall and silent, was a figure who seemed to step out of legend. Kasiya, a man with dark, thoughtful eyes and an air of quiet strength, stood unmoving. From his lower back extended a tail, long and sinewy, swaying gently as though it had a life of its own. The crowd's reaction was instant and visceral. Whispers filled the air, their words sharp with suspicion and fear. An elder woman, her face lined with years of wisdom, clutched the beads around her neck and muttered, "He is not one of us. He carries a mark, one I've only seen in the stories told by my grandmother." A child, holding tightly to her mother's hand, pointed at Kasiya with wide, innocent eyes. "Mama, is he cursed?" she asked, her voice carrying a blend of fear and curiosity. The mother knelt swiftly, shielding the child with her arm while her gaze darted nervously between Kasiya and the growing crowd. Kasiya's expression remained calm, though inside his thoughts swirled like a storm. He had traveled far to reach Kitundu, seeking trade and the knowledge of its renowned healers. His tale, a part of him since birth, had always attracted attention, sometimes wonder, but often fear. He had learned to expect it, yet the hostility he now faced felt heavier, more immediate. He slowly raised his hands, palms open, in a gesture of peace. His deep voice carried over the anxious murmurs. "I mean no harm," he said simply, his tone steady but firm. "I am Kasiya, a traveler from the hills of Mbulu. I seek only to share what I know and learn what you have to teach." For a moment, his words seemed to settle over the crowd like a blanket, softening the edges of their fear. But then a man stepped forward, his face flushed with anger and suspicion. Jabari, a trader known for his fiery temper and booming voice, pointed an accusatory finger at Kasiya. "We've heard tales of men like you," he spat. "Spirits in disguise, bringing misfortune to those who show them kindness. Bind him before he curses this place." The crowd hesitated, torn between their fear of the unknown and the weight of Jabari's words. Kasiya held Jabari's gaze, his calm demeanor unwavering despite the escalating tension. He took a step forward, and the villagers instinctively recoiled, their whispers turning into sharp gasps. "Listen to me," Kasiya began, his voice carrying an urgency that demanded attention. "I'm no spirit. What you see is simply part of who I am, a part that has brought me strength, not harm. If I were a danger, would I stand before you unarmed, asking for nothing but the chance to trade and learn?" A silence followed his words, heavy and uncertain. Kasiya could see the doubt flickering in their eyes, but it wasn't enough to extinguish their fear. Before he could say more, Jabari shouted again, his voice cutting through the quiet. "Words mean nothing. Let the chief decide his fate. Until then, he must not be allowed to roam free." The crowd seemed to find unity in Jabari's proposal, their murmurs turning into a unanimous chant. "Take him to Chief Nzinga," they cried, their voices a mixture of relief and apprehension. Kasiya allowed himself to be led, his hands bound loosely with a rope as a precaution. He felt the weight of their stares, the sharp edges of their whispered judgments. Yet, amidst the fear and chaos, he also caught glimpses of curiosity, of minds that hadn't yet been fully consumed by suspicion. As he was guided toward the chief's hut, Kasiya's thoughts were steady. He knew this would not be the first time he had to fight against the weight of fear and ignorance. And he knew that to earn their trust, he would need more than words. Whatever test awaited him in the presence of Chief Nzinga, Kasiya resolved to face it with the same quiet strength that had carried him this far. Cassia was a man who walked with purpose, though his path was never fixed. Among his people, he was known as the Wanderer of the Hills, a title spoken with a mixture of reverence and wonder. The hills of Mbulu, where the earth was red and the sky seemed to stretch endlessly, had been both his home and his refuge. It was in those quiet, rolling landscapes that Cassia had learned the ways of his ancestors, how to read the signs of the land, how to find water where none seemed to flow, and how to listen to the stories carried on the wind. Yet, it was not the wisdom of his travels that set him apart, but the mark he bore since birth. His tale, a strange and striking feature, had made him a figure of fascination and unease. Among his village, the tale was seen as a sign, though its meaning was debated. Some elders whispered that it connected Cassia to the ancient guardians of their land, protectors who stood between the mortal world and the unseen forces of nature. Others saw it as a mere anomaly, neither blessed nor cursed. To Cassia's grandmother, Adana, the truth was clear. She often told him, "You carry the mark of a guardian. This is not a burden, my child, but a gift. The world may not always understand, but you must never let their fear silence your truths." Those words, spoken in her soft but firm voice, had stayed with him long after she passed. Standing in the midst of the hostile crowd in Kitundu, those words echoed in his mind. The weight of their stares, heavy with suspicion, did not shake him. Instead, he held his ground, his dark eyes scanning the sea of faces. He saw fear in their expressions, but also curiosity, an ember of possibility buried beneath the layers of doubt. He raised his voice, rich with the lilting cadence of his Swahili heritage. "I am no curse," he declared, his tone both commanding and calm. "I come seeking knowledge and trade, not harm." For a moment, there was silence, as if his words had stolen the air from the marketplace. But the moment passed quickly, replaced by a ripple of murmurs. Some whispered that his words were too measured, too rehearsed, as if crafted to deceive. Others began to question aloud what his true intentions might be. A young man, his voice trembling but resolute, called out, "If you mean no harm, why do you hide your purpose behind such strangeness? What traveler looks like you?" Cassia met the man's gaze, his calm unwavering. "I hide nothing," he replied. "What you see is part of who I am. I have traveled far to share what I know and learn from the wisdom of Kitundu. I do not ask for fear or favor, only the chance to be heard." But the tension in the air was too thick, the crowd too restless. Fear is a powerful force, and it often drowns out reason. Jabari, the trader whose booming accusations had first stirred the crowd, stepped forward again. His voice carried the sharpness of a blade. "Words are easy for tricksters," he shouted. "He speaks of peace, but his presence is a disruption. Look at how he's divided us already." His words struck a chord, and the crowd's murmurs grew louder, more chaotic. Amid the rising noise, Cassia's thoughts turned inward. He remembered the nights spent by the fire with Adana, her stories weaving tales of courage and resilience. "The world is not always kind to those who are different," she had once told him, her hand resting gently on his shoulder. "But it is those differences that make us strong. Remember, Cassia, silence is not the same as peace." Drawing on that memory, Cassia refused to retreat into silence. Instead, he stepped forward, his hands raised in a gesture of openness. "If my presence has brought you fear, I will not resist your will," he said, his voice firm but devoid of anger. "Take me to your leader. Let them judge my purpose and decide my fate." The crowd hesitated, caught off guard by his willingness to comply. For a moment, the tide of their fears seemed to ebb, replaced by uncertainty. But Jabari, sensing the wavering of the crowd, pressed on. "Then let it be so," he declared, his voice ringing with finality. "We will take him to Chief Nzinga, and she will see the truth of what he is." The crowd began to move, surrounding Cassia as they led him toward the chief's hut. His hands were loosely bound, more a symbol of containment than a true restraint. As they walked, Cassia felt the eyes of the villagers on him, their fear mingling with unease and curiosity. Some seemed to question their own actions, while others clung to their superstitions. Cassia's steps did not falter. He carried himself with the quiet strength that had earned him his name, the wanderer of the hills. He knew that this moment was only the beginning of the journey. Whatever awaited him in the presence of Chief Nzinga, he would face it as he had faced every trial before, with courage, clarity, and an unshakable resolve to honor the truth of who he was. Chief Nzinga's presence dominated the room, her authority woven into every detail of her being. She sat upon a throne carved from dark wood, its armrests shaped into lion heads that seemed to watch over the proceedings. Her silver-threaded hair was wrapped in a deep blue cloth, matching the patterned shawl draped over her shoulders. The hut smelled faintly of dried herbs and burning sage, a sharp contrast to the earthy aroma of the village outside. Around her, the council of elders sat silently, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and caution as the villagers ushered Cassia into the room. The tension was palpable as the crowd spilled in behind him, their voices still buzzing with accusations and speculations. Nzinga raised a hand, her gesture commanding silence. The room fell quiet instantly, the weight of her authority settling over everyone present. Her piercing gaze locked onto Cassia, studying him with an intensity that seemed to strip away pretense. Her voice, though calm, carried a firmness that demanded truth. "Who are you, stranger? And why have you come to Kitundu with this unusual feature?" Cassia held her gaze, his posture steady despite the murmurs of the crowd. He could feel their fear pressing against him like a wave, but he refused to let it unnerve him. Taking a deep breath, he spoke, "I am Cassia, a traveler from the mountains of Mbulu. My tale is no curse. It is simply part of who I am. I come to trade knowledge of herbs and healing, nothing more." The room remained silent as his words hung in the air, their sincerity cutting through the noise of superstition and doubt. Nzinga leaned back in her throne, her expression unreadable. Her eyes lingered on Cassia's tale for a moment before returning to his face. "You claim peace," she said, her tone measured, "but your presence has stirred fear among my people. Fear is not easily silenced, nor is it without reason." Before Cassia could respond, an elder seated to Nzinga's left leaned forward. His name was Adebayo, a man known for his cautious nature and sharp tongue. "Chief Nzinga," he began, his voice laced with suspicion, "we have heard tales of those marked by strange features. Some say they're spirits in human form, others say they bring misfortune. How can we be certain this man's presence will not bring harm to Kitundu?" Cassia turned to Adebayo, his gaze steady. "Elder, I understand your fear. I've seen it before in other villages. But I am no spirit, nor do I bring misfortune. My tale is not a curse, but a mark of my lineage, a lineage that values knowledge and healing above all else. I come with no ill intent, only a desire to share what I know and learn from your wisdom." Nzinga tapped her fingers against the armrest of her throne, her sharp eyes never leaving Cassia's face. She seemed to be weighing his words, her mind working through the layers of truth and uncertainty. "Words alone will not ease the fears of my people," she said finally. "If you are who you claim to be, then you must prove it. Show us that you bring knowledge and not danger, or I will have no choice but to act in the interest of Kitundu." A murmur rippled through the crowd, a mixture of agreement and apprehension. Cassia's heart tightened, but he kept his composure. He could see in Nzinga's eyes that she was not driven by fear like the others, but by duty, a duty to protect her people. He took a step forward, his voice steady and deliberate. "Tell me what proof you seek, and I will provide it. Not because I need to justify my presence, but because I respect the trust you hold for your people." Nzinga's gaze softened, ever so slightly, at his response. She gestured to a table near the back of the room, where several bundles of herbs lay neatly arranged. "If you are truly a healer, then you will know these herbs. Tell us their names, their uses, and how they are prepared. If your knowledge is true, it will speak louder than any words." Cassia nodded, stepping toward the table. He recognized the herbs instantly: baobab leaves, rooibos stalks, and the bright orange flowers of the mariala tree. He began to speak, his voice calm but confident, describing each plant's properties and the methods of preparation passed down through his family. As he spoke, Nzinga watched him intently, her expression slowly shifting from skepticism to intrigue. But as Cassia finished, a sharp voice interrupted from the back of the room. Knowledge can be stolen, Jabari called out, his tone defiant. How do we know he hasn't learned these things from others, only to use them to deceive us? The question hung in the air, and for a moment, Cassia felt the weight of doubt pressing down on him again. He turned to Nzinga, his voice unwavering. Then test me further. Ask me of things only a true healer would know. Let me show you that my intentions are pure. Nzinga regarded him in silence for a long moment before nodding. Very well. There is a grove outside Kitundu, known only to the healers of this land. Within it grows a rare herb, one that is said to reveal the true nature of those who seek it. If you can find this herb and return unharmed, it will be proof enough. The crowd gasped at her words, and even the elders exchanged uneasy glances. The grove she spoke of was shrouded in mystery and danger, said to be guarded by spirits that tested the hearts of those who entered. But Cassia's resolve did not waver. He bowed his head respectfully. I accept your task, Chief Nzinga. I will find the herb and return, not to prove my worth, but to honor the trust you place in truth. Nzinga's gaze softened once more, a flicker of respect crossing her features. Then go, she said, her voice steady, and may the spirits of the land guide your path. As Cassia turned to leave, the weight of the challenge settled on him. But so too did the quiet strength that had carried him this far. He knew the path ahead would not be easy, but he was ready to face it. Chief Nzinga sat in silence, her fingers lightly drumming against the carved wood of her throne as she deliberated. The villagers stood in uneasy anticipation, their whispers a blend of fear, doubt, and curiosity. The tension hung heavy in the air, thick as the smoke of the incense that curled from a clay dish by Nzinga's feet. Just as the chief seemed ready to speak, a deep voice emerged from the shadows, cutting through the quiet like a first crack of thunder before a storm. I've seen this mark before, the voice said, calm yet commanding. Heads turned as an elder stepped forward. His name was Sobari, a man whose stories were as vast and winding as the river that snaked through Kitunda's lands. He was draped in a patchwork cloak of earthy tones, his weathered face framed by a gray beard that seemed to carry the weight of countless tales. His eyes, though clouded with age, sparkled with a clarity that demanded attention. Sobari's words carried weight, for he was known among the people not only for his wisdom, but for his connection to the old ways, to the stories that bridged the present to the distant past. He addressed Nzinga directly, his voice steady. Chief Nzinga, our ancestors spoke of those born with such a mark. They were not ordinary men, nor were they to be feared. These individuals, rare as they were chosen by the spirits to be guardians of the land, keepers of balance, and protectors of the sacred grounds. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some looked at Cassia with newfound wonder, while others clung tightly to their skepticism, their fear of the unknown too deeply rooted to be shaken by a single tale. Nzinga's expression remained impassive, but the slight arch of her brow hinted at her intrigue. Elder Sobari, she said, her tone measured, you speak of legends, stories told to guide us. Yes, but are they to be taken as truth? How can we know this man's purpose aligns with what you claim? Sobari took a step closer, his staff tapping against the ground as he moved. Because the spirits do not choose lightly, he replied, his voice tinged with reverence. And because the signs are all around us, if only we choose to see, the mark he bears the tale is no curse. It is a reminder, a connection to the guardians of old who walked among us to preserve harmony when the balance was threatened. Nzinga's gaze shifted to Cassia, who had been silent through Sobari's words. Her eyes were sharp, unyielding, as if they sought to pierce through to the truth of his soul. Cassia, she said, her voice deliberate. Do you know of this guardian's oath the elder speaks of? Are you aware of the responsibility such a mark might carry? Cassia hesitated, the weight of the moment pressing against him like the midday sun. He thought of his grandmother, Adana, and the story she had shared by the firelight, tales of men and women who lived in service to the land, whose lives were not their own, but were given over to a higher purpose. He shook his head slowly. I know only the stories my grandmother told me, he admitted, his voice steady. She spoke of those who lived to protect the balance of nature, who sought peace and harmony above all else. If this is what you mean, then perhaps I know a small part of it. But I have never been told of any oaths. Zubri nodded, his expression one of understanding. Then it is possible you have not yet been called to your purpose. The path of a guardian is not one that reveals itself all at once. It begins with a mark, yes, but it must be forged through trials, through choices that define the heart of the one chosen. Nzinga leaned back in her throne, her fingers steepled in thought. The room was silent save for the occasional shuffle of feet or the crackle of the fire. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of her authority. If what Elder Zubri says is true, then you are more than a mere traveler. But stories, however compelling, cannot be the sole measure of truth. If you are lying, the spirits will reveal it, and you will answer for the chaos you have brought to my village. Her words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Cassia met her gaze, his expression unflinching. I have no lies to reveal, he said simply. Test me. If that is what you must do, I will face whatever trial you deem necessary, not because I wish to prove myself, but because I wish to honor the truth. Nzinga studied him for a long moment, her sharp eyes narrowing as if weighing his soul. Finally, she nodded. Very well. There is a trial that has long been used to reveal the intentions of those who claim peace, but bring unrest. You will undertake this trial, Cassia, and the spirits themselves will judge your purpose. The crowd buzzed with renewed energy, their whispers filling the space like the rustling of leaves before a storm. Zubri stepped back, his expression unreadable, though a flicker of hope glimmered in his aged eyes. Cassia stood firm, his heart steady despite the uncertainty that lay ahead. He knew that whatever the trial entailed, it would demand more than strength or knowledge. It would demand the truth of who he was, and he was ready to face it. Nzinga's decree carried the weight of finality, her voice steady as she announced that Cassia must undertake the trial of the Baobab. The villagers stirred uneasily at the mention of the Forbidden Grove, a place whispered about in fireside tales, but rarely spoken of in the open. Legends surrounded the grove like a shroud, stories of spirits that tested the souls of those who dared to enter. Some said the grove itself was alive, watching, waiting to judge the worthy from the unworthy. The task was clear: retrieve the rare Lamoka Erd, said to glow faintly under moonlight, and return unharmed. The grove lay at the edge of the village, where the land grew wild and untamed. As Cassia approached, the air seemed to shift, growing cooler and denser, as though he were crossing an invisible threshold. The trees loomed tall and ancient, their twisted branches reaching skyward like hands frozen in silent prayer. The ground beneath his feet was soft, carpeted with moss and fallen leaves, muffling his every step. A faint rustling in the underbrush hinted at unseen creatures moving just beyond his sight, and the low hum of insects wove a tense melody in the stillness. Each step deeper into the grove felt heavier than the last, as if the weight of the land's history pressed down on him. Whispers began to swirl around him, soft and indistinct, like voices carried on the wind. They seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, their tones shifting between curiosity and caution. Cassia's heart quickened, but he kept his pace steady, his mind focused on his task. He remembered his grandmother's words spoken long ago. Fear will come, Cassia. It is not the absence of fear that makes one strong, but the choice to move forward despite it. As the moonlight filtered through the canopy, it illuminated a clearing ahead. At its center stood the great baobab tree, its massive trunk seeming to pulse faintly with life. The air around it felt charged, as though the tree itself was aware of his presence. Cassia approached with reverence, his breath steady but shallow. Beneath the tree, nestled among its gnarled roots, lay the Lamoka Erd. Its small, delicate leaves glowed softly, their light casting faint shadows on the ground. Cassia knelt before the tree, reaching out slowly to pluck the Erd. The moment his fingers brushed its stem, a sudden rustling behind him made him freeze. The whispers grew louder, more distinct, and the air grew colder. Rising to his feet, Cassia turned to face whatever had disturbed the stillness. From the shadows emerged a figure, its form shifting and indistinct, as though made of smoke and starlight. Its voice echoed, layered and otherworldly. "Why have you come, Guardian?" it asked, the title spoken with both recognition and challenge. Casilla straightened his posture, his voice steady despite the weight of the figure's presence. "I seek to prove my intent," he said. "I wish only to bring healing and unity, to show that I am no threat to this land or its people." The figure regarded him silently for a moment, its presence filling the grove with an almost unbearable stillness. Finally, it spoke again, its tone softer but no less commanding. "Your words carry truth, but intent alone is not enough. To walk the path of a guardian is to bear the weight of the land and its people, to act with courage when others falter, and to seek balance even when it is difficult. Do you understand this?" Casilla nodded, his gaze unwavering. "I do." The figure inclined its head, a gesture that carried both acknowledgement and expectation. "Then take the herb and carry its light with honor. The spirits will watch your journey, guardian. Prove yourself worthy not only through words, but through the choices you make." Before Casilla could respond, the figure dissolved into the air, its form scattering like mist in the wind. The whispers faded, and the grove grew silent once more. Casilla turned back to the baobab tree, his resolve stronger than ever. He plucked the Lamoka herb carefully, cradling it in his hands as though it were the most precious of treasures. As he made his way back through the grove, the path seemed clearer, the air lighter. The trial was not yet over, but Casilla knew that he had taken the first step toward proving not only his innocence but his purpose. The spirits had seen him, and now, so would the people of Kitundu. Casilla returned to Kitundu as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of amber and crimson. The village, once brimming with suspicion and fear, now stood in silent anticipation. The rare Lamoka herb, cradled delicately in Casilla's hands, glowed faintly even in the waning light, a testament to his triumph. The whispers began as soon as he entered the clearing, growing louder with each step he took toward Chief Nzinga's hut. Children peered curiously from behind their mothers, while the elders exchanged glances heavy with unspoken thoughts. The air was thick with tension, the weight of the trial's outcome pressing on every soul present. Inside the chief's hut, Nzinga sat as regal as ever, her sharp eyes fixed on Casilla as he approached. The flickering flames of the hearth cast shadows across her face, deepening the lines of her wisdom. Casilla stopped before her, lowering himself to one knee as he presented the herb. For a moment, the only sound was the crackle of the fire. Nzinga took the herb, studying its delicate leaves with the precision of someone well-versed in its lore. The glow of the plant seemed to reflect in her eyes, adding an almost otherworldly quality to her already commanding presence. "You have passed the trial," Nzinga said, her voice firm yet tinged with something softer. Respect, perhaps, or understanding. Her words carried through the room like the first drops of rain on dry earth. "You are no curse but a protector," as Elder Zibri claimed. The spirits themselves have confirmed it. The villagers, gathered just outside, gasped collectively. The murmurs that followed were not of fear, but of awe. Many of them had doubted, their fears rooted in generations of superstition. Yet now they stood humbled before the truth. Casilla, the man with the tail, was no harbinger of misfortune, but a figure chosen by forces beyond their understanding. The weight of their collective shame hung in the air, as heavy as the scent of sage that burned in the corner. One by one, the villagers approached Casilla, their heads bowed in apology. A woman, clutching the hand of her young daughter, spoke first. "Forgive us," she said, her voice trembling. "We were blinded by fear. We did not see you for who you truly are." Her daughter, the same child who had asked if Casilla was cursed, looked up at him with wide eyes filled with wonder rather than fear. "Are you a guardian?" the girl whispered, her voice barely audible. Casilla knelt to meet her gaze, a gentle smile softening his features. "I am someone who seeks to protect and to heal," he said. "That is all I have ever wanted to be." The apologies continued, each one filled with genuine regret. Casilla accepted them all with grace, his composure unshaken. He bore no bitterness toward the people of Kitundu, understanding that their fear had come from a place of vulnerability. His forgiveness was not a gesture of duty, but one of true compassion, reflection of the lessons instilled in him by his grandmother. Nzinga stood, her presence commanding silence once more. She addressed the villagers, her voice resonant. Cassia has shown us what it means to rise above fear and prejudice. He came to us seeking knowledge, and instead, he has given us wisdom. From this day forward, Cassia will be known as an honorary guardian of Kitundu, a protector of our people and our land. Cheers erupted from the crowd, their voices lifting into the night sky like a song of renewal. The energy in the village transformed, the tension replaced by a sense of unity and hope. Cassia, though humbled by the title bestowed upon him, felt the enormity of the responsibility settle on his shoulders. Yet, it was a burden he accepted willingly, for it aligned with the purpose that had guided him all his life. Over the weeks that followed, Cassia began sharing the knowledge of his ancestors with the people of Kitundu. He taught them how to use the herbs that grew in the surrounding lands, not just for healing, but for sustaining balance with nature. He told them the stories passed down through his lineage, tales of guardians who lived not to dominate, but to preserve the delicate harmony of their world. The villagers listened eagerly, their fear replaced by respect and curiosity. In time, the story of Cassia, the man with a tale, grew beyond Kitundu. It spread to neighboring villages and distant lands, carried by travelers and storytellers who wove his tale into the fabric of their own cultures. To some, he became a symbol of courage. To others, a reminder of the strength found in embracing one's uniqueness. To the people of Kitundu, he was simply Cassia, a man who had taught them to see beyond fear and to recognize the beauty in what made them different. The village, once steeped in suspicion, became a place of learning and harmony, its transformation a testament to Cassia's quiet strength and unwavering resolve. And though Cassia's tale was shared in countless variations, one truth remained constant. It was a story of understanding, of courage, and of the enduring power of unity. It was a story that would be told for generations, a legacy of light in a world often shadowed by fear. If you enjoyed this video, please help us grow by subscribing to this humble channel. And if you'd like to watch more videos like this, we prepared the next video especially for you. Click here to watch.